is Emily Kalyasinski, and today I am sharing my progress on a report investigating a phenomenon we are all likely familiar with, which is the all-nighter culture here at the University of Kentucky. My final project, which I prepared mostly for the Office of Student Success, but it's also for students as a whole here at the university to kind of better understand why and how we need sleep to function. And then this report kind of explores how our normalization of sleep deprivation is actually a systemic barrier to the very academic excellence that our university strives for. So, the purpose of this report is to move the conversation away from framing sleep as an optional wellness behavior. Instead, I'm positioning it as a biological requirement for learning. And then by targeting the UK Office of Student Success, I'm speaking directly to the administrators who oversee student retention and GPA metrics, and they're the ones that can actually make a institutional change, and they can actually implement that change through their office. So we've all seen it before, the grind culture where being exhausted is a badge of honor. I'm sure you've seen it with your friends or even your kids, your family, friends. You've seen it. It's, someone spending all night at the Willy T, and instead of saying, maybe you should get some sleep, you're like, wow, man, that person stayed at the library for 8 hours all night. Like, I need to be more like them. But what you're not realizing is how you're actually not learning at all when you are pulling all-nighters. Data from the American College Health Association shows that nearly 25% of students identify sleep issues as their biggest academic hurdle, surpassing even stress. So between our natural biological sleep cycles and the environmental triggers like late night caffeine and blue light from our computers, which we use to study, we are fighting a losing battle against our own physiology. And then to build a credible argument for administrators, my methodology involves a heavy synthesis of peer-reviewed research. I looked at clinical data from high-impact journals to explain the why behind the cognitive decline as we lose more and more sleep. I've also analyzed population-level data to ensure these findings reflect that the actual challenges we face as college students today are reflected in these journals. And here are some of my top sources that I've been using. So this is where the science gets sobering. So research shows that staying awake for 24 hours creates cognitive impairment similar to being legally drunk. Specifically, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that we need for complex problem solving, decision making. It is basically the brain to your brain. Is the first to suffer that. So when we deprive our brain of sleep, the most important part of our brain that makes all those decisions, help us think and all that, is the first one to suffer. So when we try pulling all-nighters, we are essentially trying to learn while being cognitively impaired. So our study hours are basically becoming inefficient by then because your prefrontal cortex and the rest of your brain are so sleep deprived that they can't really learn anything. And then one of my most significant findings so far is that consistency matters more than the total hours. So students with regular schedules generally had higher GPAs than those with erratic patterns, even if they slept the same amount total. And then I'm also looking at the 8-hour challenge, which proved that students who were incentivized to sleep 8 hours during final weeks actually performed better than those who stayed up to cram. And then here's a graph that I made to kind of help visualize my data. So at the bottom is sleep variability, and then on the y-axis here we have the GPA. And as you can see, as we get more variable in our sleep patterns, our GPA starts to decrease. So that's why consistency is key. We say it in so many things, like sports and other things, but many of us don't realize how important consistency is to sleep as well. And then in terms of progress, the core scientific argument and stakeholder analysis are complete. My next steps involve creating original diagrams to visualize the relationship between sleep consistency and performance. My last graph showed GPA, but I kind of want to also focus on how performance is impacted as well, not just GPA. And then I also need to expand my case studies by about around 800 words to meet the final requirements, and I also need to draft the formal front matter, like the letter of transmittal. And then as I move toward the finish line, I'd love your feedback. So these are just some questions that I've kind of thought of as I was going through making this presentation and writing my report. I really want to make sure that this report focuses on how students can better understand why sleep is so important and start focusing on sleep more. So, does the leap from brain science to university policy feel logical to you? Also, as my peers, would an incentive-based sleep challenge like the one that I mentioned in my presentation and report actually motivate you to maybe get more sleep and see how it helps you? And then I really want to make sure that this report empowers students rather than just criticizing our work ethic, and give us better ways to study and better ways to function as hardworking college students. So I hope this was helpful, and then here are my references. Thanks.